Hello, it's David Frost here. In this video, I want to talk about the school principal's role in enhancing teachers' development projects. First of all, I want to tell you that in HeartsCam, we looked at this question 10 years ago, and we staged a seminar for a handful of school senior leaders, as we call them, head teachers, deputy head teachers and so on. And we got together to discuss this question. We came up with a report to clarify our thinking, and there was a list of 18 key points that colleagues around the table had made. And here's just 4 examples of the kind of points that were being made by school principal there. These are people who are experienced at having teachers in their schools leading development projects. So, for example, they said it's really important to build trust between members of staff. They said empowering teachers by recognising and valuing their development work, to recognise and value that work. Thirdly, to respect teachers, to show that they and their knowledge and their efforts improve practice, and this is valued. And you have to empathise with teachers, they said. See things from their perspective. So this is just the first few points in a list of 18, which I'm happy to share with you if that's helpful. So obviously, in a sense, before you begin as a baseline, as a context, you need to create a conducive culture, a culture within which it's possible for teachers to exercise leadership. So in order to be able to do this, to lead, to plan, to manage their projects, teachers really need permission to lead and innovate. They need to feel it's okay. But it's more than that. It isn't just permission. It isn't just saying, oh yes, okay, if you like. It's actually about encouraging in a very deliberate way. And this is a key thing for school principals to think about. How can they show their encouragement to teachers that their leadership is welcome? And of course, you've got to create the climate in which you know that colleagues will be happy to collaborate. So when a teacher, for example, proposes to colleagues that they join with that teacher to review a particular aspect of practice, they might, for example, say, well, why don't we get together and discuss how we mark students' written work? Because I think that's quite a problem, and I think we could improve upon it, and so on. And they might gather together a group of 5 other colleagues, for example, and invite them to a meeting and maybe make them some coffee and so on. And, now, will colleagues be happy to do that? Is it the sort of school where colleagues will say, oh, collaboration, great, yeah, let's do it? Or is it the kind of school where they think, are you mad? I don't have time for that sort of thing. So, and it's for the school principal to make sure that culture is there. So does the culture also, does it suggest to people that it is normal for teachers to lead change? Is this something the school, as an organisation, values? So let's talk about this business of the difference between permission and approval. How do you positively indicate your approval for teachers who want to initiate and lead change in their school? So a key question for a principal is to say, well, do the participants in the teacher leadership group, for example, know that you welcome their efforts to exercise leadership? How would they know that their efforts are welcome? Unless you say something, or in some other way have gestures which indicate that, then how are teachers to know? Some might think it's true, and others might think, really? Might be unsure. So ask yourself, is innovation in your school regarded as normal? Or at least, is it regarded as being a healthy thing, a good thing for the school? Is that something that you are able to convey within the school? Because the principal is the one with the authority to try to set a direction for that culture. If there are colleagues in the school who don't think it's normal, don't think it's a good thing to innovate, and who else but the school principal is the one to say, let's just talk about innovation. This is a really good thing for us. That's the role of the principal, isn't it? So thirdly, when you as the principal, when you talk to the whole staff, and I assume that most schools it's true that the school principal will be addressing the staff maybe once a week, maybe every day. But when you do that, do you mention that the people in the TLK group, the teacher leadership group, do you mention that they're leading projects? Do you say, oh, there's a really interesting project going on, colleagues in so-and-so are leading this project, and we look forward to hearing about it in the future? Do you say that kind of thing to give people the idea that this is welcome? And do you ever say anything? The principal can ask themselves, do I ever say anything to teachers in the group, in the teacher leadership group, who I know are leading projects? And if I see them passing by in the corridor, do I say, oh, I hear you're doing an interesting project, very good? Do you say things like that? Or do they just not know whether you think it's okay? As we know, the key person in enabling teachers to exercise leadership are those people who are facilitating the support group for the teachers who are wanting to exercise leadership. So usually there is one or maybe two, better if it's two, facilitators in the school, and they lead the group sessions. They enable the talk within that session. But it's a skill. Facilitation is quite different to the more instructive kind of training model. It is about enabling, supporting, empowering teachers. And it's a very particular style. So, does the school principal know that the facilitators are genuinely reflecting on what they do as facilitators? Do they talk about it? Do they think about it? Do they try to examine and explore what it is to be a facilitator? Or do you think they just kind of take it for granted, maybe just assuming they know? Key question. Second question, do the facilitators involved, maybe the two, maybe there's more, but do they genuinely share the role, and do they have discussions between themselves? Typically after each session, that would be the obvious time, wouldn't it, for the two facilitators to say, so, how did that go? How was that session? Did we do the best we could do within that session, or could we refine the way we do that? And do you think that those facilitators are seeking guidance from the TLK strategy group? Are they asking themselves what people at the centre think about the way they do this? Are they reading things? Are they attending sessions for facilitators? Are they documenting and trying to communicate how they're getting on with the people at the centre? And what about the principal? Is the principal talking to the facilitators about it? Is the principal having meetings or informal conversations, perhaps, with facilitators and saying, how's that facilitating going? Do you think you're getting the hang of it? Is there any way I can help you to develop your skill in that? It's a good question. And what about the facilitators themselves? How often do they ask the people they're trying to facilitate to give them feedback about the sessions and about the facilitator's role? Not easy for participants just to answer the question. If the facilitator says to one of the participants, so what do you think? How am I doing? They're not likely to get more than a polite answer. So there's a bit of skill involved in finding ways to enabling participants to give genuine feedback in which they can be honest. Anonymised, for example. and that there are many techniques that you can use to enable participants to record what they think without it being difficult for them. In HeartsCam in the past, we have found that having a mentor, or arranging for each person in the group, in the teacher leadership group, to have a mentor other than the facilitator is a good thing. So we find that in many HeartsCam schools, each teacher within the teacher leadership group has got another person, a senior person usually, allocated to them as a mentor, somebody who will meet with them and talk with them. This is not the group facilitator, but somebody else that's not in the group, not involved directly in the group. Usually somebody more senior, but the important thing is it's somebody who would be able to do it with sensitivity, because it's not easy to empower another person by having a conversation with them. So each mentor, when this happens, is asked to have regular conversations with their allocated participant, to meet them, every few weeks, 2 or 3 weeks maybe, just to say, how's it going? Would you like to tell me what progress you're making? Is there anything I can do to help, etc.? But what's absolutely key here, and we found this through difficult experience in the past, the mentors have to be asked to adopt a supportive role, to be supportive and helpful, and not to be instructive. So it's tempting, if you're a senior colleague, it's tempting to say, well, I know how to do this, so I shall just tell them, this is what you need to do. Do this, don't do that, do it like this. That doesn't actually help the teacher to develop their own confidence and skill. If you're expecting them to follow the way you would do it, it's tricky. Better to say, talk to me and let me ask you some questions about that. And when they tell you, you say, that's interesting. So why do you do it like that? Have you ever thought of doing it like this? And so on. So a tentative, speculative, exploratory kind of conversation, which has the potential to be empowering rather than disempowering. Another thing that school principals can do is to arrange to have a dialogue between the principal, but others who are senior leaders. In the UK, we talk about a senior leadership team, vice principals and so on. But it's possible to arrange a dialogue or a discussion, if you prefer, between the senior leaders and each of the teachers in the teacher leadership group. So let me give you an example at Sir John Law School. This is a school that's been very active for many, many years, since 2004 in HeartsCam, with a teacher leadership group every year since 2004. And at that school, the principal always invites the members of the teacher leadership group to have lunch with the senior leadership team. Just sandwiches and so on. Usually 2 members of the group at any one time. Maybe 3, but something like that. Not all of them, and not one. So the participants go along and they take their sandwiches with them, and they're invited to talk about their projects, and they tell members of the senior leadership team about their projects and how they're going. Not afterwards, but during. They give an account of how they are going. Not that they've already finished. It's not at the end. It's in the process. And then members of the senior leadership team can ask questions. And they can say, I'm very interested in what you've just said about that. Tell me why this and what about that, and have you considered this issue, and so on. So the experience of those senior leaders is enriching what the teacher is trying to do. And this sort of event happens in many schools in HeartsCam and has done for many years. And everybody says it's really so valuable because you get the expertise of the senior leaders, but at the same time, you are honouring what the teachers are doing. You're showing that you value it. You're showing respect for what they're trying to do, and it's very encouraging for them. Now, another important thing that school principals can do is to arrange, or perhaps ask someone else to arrange, but to make it possible to have internal networking opportunities within the school. Now, if I give an example, that will make it clear what I mean by that. So here's an example from the John Henry Newman School on the TLDW programme in Hartscam. And the participants there were asked by the deputy head teacher if they would organise a staff development event, that is, a professional learning event for the whole staff. And the facilitators of the group would, of course, assist with that organisation of that event. But they would essentially, as a whole group, would plan the event. And every teacher in the school would be asked to attend this event, and there would be a series of workshops led by members of the teacher leadership group. And each workshop would be focused on their particular projects. And there would be, if there's maybe 10 people in the group, there'd be 10 workshops, and teachers would be invited to attend at least one, and then another one, and then maybe a third one, and they do it in rotation. So there was always a choice, and then the workshops would happen a second time, and so on, until everybody had got to see the ones or attend the ones they wanted to do. And at John Henry Newman, the teachers will be asked to do this as part of what they call directed time. So in the UK, the principal can decide what things teachers should do in a certain within a certain allocation of time. So every principal can say, we have so many hours of directed time. Other things that you might want to do, that's your time. Okay, so most schools in Hartscam do something along these lines. They do this kind of event where the teacher leaders, if you like, are running workshops for the rest of the school. And they often just simply do it in the way that we do our Hartscam-wide network events. In other words, there are posters, there's a kind of maybe a little speech from the front, and then there's a series of optional workshops. Now, the event I was just speaking about, that's one way. But another thing you can do is to encourage people to disseminate information about their projects. So another example, in Hartscam, the participants in the TLDW programme will often devise strategies for dissemination within their own schools. For example, a teacher who led a group of colleagues in a project to develop better ways to use small group work in a classroom. This was at Birchwood School, where Val Hill was teaching at the time. And then when they've done the project, and one of the outcomes is to produce a leaflet which outlines, for example, the features of good group work or effective group work, and then probably sets out some guidelines for colleagues. If you want to do good group work, try doing this and then doing that, and make sure you clarify this, and so on. And the principal of the school, of course, presented this leaflet to the whole staff and really recommended that they all read this leaflet and learn from it. Another example, a teacher made a video, and this video explained her project about how to improve the marking of students' written work. And it contained advice and so on, the things that we've learnt from our development project. And they put this video on what they call the intranet. I see them have those, the school intranet, where everybody can get access to that material, and then they would be able to watch that video whenever they want. Well, I want to finish by just making some rather broad and general comment about leadership. And you read in the literature various ideas about leadership and followership. It's not a word I like the sound of myself, but there's no doubt that good leaders will inspire others to follow, and good leadership, you could say, creates enthusiastic followership. There's no doubt about that. And we should all learn from that, because everybody can exercise leadership and therefore can expect others to follow their lead. It's a reasonable point. But secondly, really good leadership, I mean great leadership, enables leadership in others. So it's more than followership. It's actually leading to further leadership on the behalf of others, which multiplies the effect of the leadership that is coming from the individual. Now, a lot of people in leadership discussions will quote this ancient Chinese philosopher, Lao Tzu. And it's an interesting quote, isn't it? It's very interesting to think about this. It's quoted all over the place. Everybody that goes on an MBA will have heard this. A leader is best when people barely know that he exists. Not so good when people obey and acclaim him. Worst when they despise him. Fail to honour people, they fail to honour you. But of a good leader who talks little, when his work is done, his aims fulfilled, they will all say, "We did this ourselves." And that really is a great result, to enable people to feel they have achieved it themselves. There's a dilemma here, though. It's a good point, but there is a dilemma. Because I would also like to suggest that leadership needs to be seen as a professional art, a skill, a capacity. So it's no good hiding it. And it is true that the effects of what you do will be to enable others to feel a sense of satisfaction. But it's also true that where leadership capacity is high in a school, it's because everyone in the school is discussing leadership. What do we mean by leadership? Oh, that behaviour, that's a good example of leadership. We should do more of that. So this kind of dialogue going on in the school about leadership is really important. And it's important that, particularly for the school principal, to think carefully about the particular art and science of school leadership, of educational leadership. So I'm with Lao Tzu to a certain extent, but it is not straightforward. We also need to make leadership visible, I would suggest. And that has got to start with the school principal. The school principal is the key leader here, because they create the conditions that enable others to lead. Thank you for your attention.